Here is our host, Tian.
Hello and welcome to World Insight. I'm Tian. This year marks the 6th anniversary of the Shanghai-based New Development Bank. Since 2015, the lender has thrown a lifeline to BRICS member states and other nations in dire need. A few days ago, New Development Bank announced it would issue 3-year bonds worth $2.25 billion to raise funds for aid amid the pandemic. How well has the New Development Bank carried out its mission to help economies in distress and shore up global cooperation? I talked to Leslie Maasdorp, the Vice President of New Development Bank. Congratulations, 6th year anniversary for the New Development Bank. You started from day one.
It's a huge moment, if you like, because one does reminisce when you hit a target like this. So I do still remember with vivid memories the moment arriving in Shanghai, meeting new friends, establishing the office with this huge expectation of building obviously a new global multilateral institution. At that stage it seemed like a very distant dream because we were a startup in every respect with no staff, no infrastructure.
No chair, no table. I remember you were telling me about buying the chair, what type to choose.
Today the bank has over 200 full-time employees. We have just closed $30 billion of loans, approved loans for infrastructure projects. We've established a huge green and sustainable footprint with our activities, so there's quite a lot to celebrate.
From 0 to 1, now to $30 billion. $30 billion.
That is correct.
It's amazing. So where are you from 1 to 100 in this period of time?
I think the bank is still very much an infant, if you like. Our peers, the World Bank, Asia Development Bank, Africa Development Bank, European Investment Bank, these institutions are all either 70 or 60 or 50 years old. So the bank is still very young and very new. However, we have significant milestones now that we can celebrate. But like our peers, there are common challenges that we all face now. As you know, as a result of COVID-19, most governments today are fiscally constrained. So they are not able to borrow as much as they could in the past because of the lack of fiscal space. So all of the multilaterals now are looking for new ways to do more with what they have, meaning to stretch the balance sheets, to find ways to expand the lending headroom. So we want to, for example, lend more to the private sector and mobilize more private sector funding. Secondly, in our case, we will also now expand the bank beyond just the BRICS countries. What that will do is it will help us to bring in fresh capital because new countries will come in, inject new capital into the bank, and that will enable us to lend more to these countries.
A lot of interesting development, but how would you make sure, Leslie, with limited resources, I mean, at this moment, right? Everybody is having limited resources because of pandemic and the economic recovery, to not spread around too much, but really focus, stay with uniqueness?
I think the bank will always have certain unique and distinctive characteristics. The first one is the sustainable and green footprint, right? From day one, as I mentioned to you before, the bank had a mandate to be green. In 2016, you will recall, Tian, in April 2016, we announced our first projects. All 5 of those projects were renewable energy, green projects. And we continued on this path with the overwhelming majority of our approved infrastructure projects are in the green and sustainable space. So we won't just finance general infrastructure, just continue to build roads and dams and power and ports. We will specialize in infrastructure projects that helps with the green transition.
True. But now, if you look at China's goal, just as one of those emerging economies that the BRICS Bank cover, 2030, 2060, ambitious goals, so enormous amount of financial support needed. But at the same time, how to balance the economy with the carbon goals, that's another thing too. So how do you, as a development bank, look at these issues of your member economies?
we see that as our central mandate. In fact, because of the 2060 and 2050 net zero target of all of our economies, the bank's mandate will shift, I would say, quite significantly over the next number of years. In fact, I would predict that multilateral banks in general will move away from traditional infrastructure to almost do everything in the sustainable and green space, because we've got a role to play to, if you like, help shape market outcomes, help drive the rest of the financial sector towards green and sustainable outcomes. As a bank, as you know, multilateral banks, the global public goods or fighting climate change is part of our core mandate, right? Obviously, it matters for us to be profitable, to be commercially viable, but our core mandate is a developmental one. So because of this target of in China for 2030 peak emissions, very ambitious, as you correctly point out, but we see our role as enabling, as supporting the government's mission to achieve those targets.
But you know, different governments are having different timetables. You know, some are looking at 2050, others looking at 2060. Emerging economies, they have very different development stage. It is still climate change, common but differentiated responsibilities. So as a bank serving mainly emerging economies, how are you looking at the timetable and say, here's what we are going to do?
You are absolutely correct. Firstly, as you said, these are very ambitious targets. China's 2060 target might seem 10 years later than the 2050. The more important starting point is that China is a very carbon-intensive economy. Yes. It's the second largest economy in the world, but it's got the biggest carbon footprint. So 28% of all global emissions in the world, that's almost a third, right? Almost a third comes from China. So China has the bigger task, if you like. I would say the 2030 target is the even more ambitious one, because in less than 10 years, the challenge now is to significantly reorient almost every sector of the economy, from energy to logistics to packaging to smart mobility. We literally will have to look at new, smart and sustainable cities. But the good news is that over the last decade, China has been the fastest in reducing the carbon intensity of its economy, and therefore there is hope and belief that it is feasible to achieve the peak emissions by 2030.
Mm-hmm. And of course, during this process, there's a lot of restructuring of the economy, that's for sure. But of course, there's a much more complicated issue than we earlier pledged during the Paris Agreement, because there's more geopolitics. There's more uncertainties of recovery due to the pandemic. So Leslie, from your bank's perspective, how do you see these uncertainties? Well, you have to make a daily decision about how to make sure the carbon print will be improved.
That's a very good question, and will take me a lot. It's a huge question, yeah. But I think the first point to make is that what the pandemic has reinforced is the idea that these global challenges like climate change, like migration, cybersecurity, global pandemics, all of these challenges can only be solved if the world works together in a coordinated, multilateral fashion. These problems you can't solve in one country alone. The first point, though, is to deepen and strengthen multilateralism. Our institutions will have an even bigger role to play going forward, to play a role as a catalyst to sort of drive market outcomes towards these bigger public policy objectives. But every day we've got to make decisions in terms of the appropriate balance. The other point I'd like to just highlight is that the pandemic has also revealed a lot of the global inequality that still persists throughout the world.
Indeed.
And we cannot continue with globalization without addressing the issue around the inclusivity of economic growth. Look at income distribution patterns. There's a lot of pockets of social instability that we have seen evidence of throughout the world. We cannot lose sight of those challenges.
There is an opportunity, but also a challenge right now with the carbon factor being emphasized, for example, by trade policies, by taxes, by cross-border interactions, that there will be new winners and new losers. Yeah. As the new development bank, one of the things you focus on is to try to bring common development to your member countries, and even more that are trying to join you. So how do you make sure this process will not be another winner-take-all process, Leslie?
I think that is at the heart of our mission. At the moment, as you know, we are a BRICS bank. We are only focusing our lending activities in Brazil, Russia, India, China, and South Africa. Very soon, though, the bank will be announcing the expansion of the bank into a much bigger global enterprise. So we will have countries joining from other emerging markets. We will also have non-borrowing members join the institution. So we will become a global institution with a strong emerging markets
focus. This is breaking news, almost, what you have just told me.
It is quite significant because it will change the character of the bank quite fundamentally. Because in the past we were, if you like, a borrowers club. The 5 members are also the ones lending. They have put capital into the bank, and they're also the borrowers at the same time. When you look at all the other banks, AIIB, Asia Development Bank, World Bank, European Bank for Reconstruction Development, they have 2 categories of members. Borrowing members, the countries where we actually do projects, and non-borrowing members. So the new development bank will now take on the same character as all of our peers.
When you think about the future impact of the new development bank, one could only imagine it's getting ever bigger because of the changes that we're experiencing right now. So many would wonder, where are the new members come from? Are they mainly coming from developing countries, or would there be more emerging economies joining in? Leslie?
I would say that this is a dynamic process. It will unfold over the next few years. For starters, the bank will have new members from all the different regions and continents in the world. Countries in Latin America, in Africa, in the Middle East, in Asia.
Interesting.
So we will have and will become more of an emerging markets bank, but also with non-borrowing members from other parts of the world.
Now, you think about the new members of the board of a new development bank and the new vice president that are coming in. You and the another vice president stay on, while others have been having new roles. So tell me more, how do you see this new roundup of personnel, and how are you, together with your colleagues, preparing for the next stage, which might be even more challenging?
I think you are absolutely right. We are now going into reflection mode, if you like, because the bank, this is also the end of the first 5-year strategy of the bank. One of the advantages of the institution, when we started out, we had 4 vice presidents and a president from India. But there was a neat complementarity, if you like, between the sort of skill sets and the competencies of the management team, and that has been reinforced in this current sort of reappointments of some vice presidents and also some infusion of new blood, if you like. So we are now looking at how should we capacitate the institution for the new era. For example, the new era will involve greater focus on private sector, lending to the private sector and crowding in more private sector capital. Secondly, a greater focus on sustainability and on ESG. Most of our projects, as I mentioned, will be in the ESG space. Thirdly, we will also raise more green bonds, and green finance is going to be a big focus for us. We were the first bank to issue an SDG bond here in China a few months ago, and as you will recall, in 2016, our first bond in the capital markets was also a green bond. And then fourthly, the other big priority is obviously the expansion of the bank into other territories. So those 4 are some of the big sort of new strategic priorities for us going forward.
During this process, carbon, of course, is one of the focus, as you mentioned earlier. But there are so many other issues about carbon that we do not know. For example, right now, how innovation is going to cover, even in the case of China, the 50% that we still do not know how to fulfill in terms of a carbon peak and carbon neutrality. Meanwhile, there's also not clear message about exactly how much would that mean in terms of economic growth? How would that balance be calculated? So how do you look at the math in a way?
I would say our starting point is to tap into the power of new technology. I think that we don't know yet how innovation and technology will shape the next 10, 20, 30 years. But our fundamental belief and premise is that new technologies will enable the transition towards the net zero world. So we would like to be supporting and then scaling some of these new technologies that will revolutionize many industries. I mean, there's no question that the packaging industry is going to change fundamentally. The idea of single-use plastics will be outmoded for sure. Cars, as you know, China, Europe, they've already announced that by 2035 they will terminate the production of normal fossil fuel driven cars. So the world will be electric vehicles and hybrid. You already have 90% of the world's electric bus fleet here in China. 50% of all passenger vehicles, electric vehicles, are sold here in China. So you will see a lot of these changes enabled by technology. So we are witnessing and looking at how we can play a role to, wherever we identify such transformative technologies, to replicate it elsewhere in other parts of the world. Take the best of what South Africa's produced, reproduce it in China. Take the best of what's produced in Brazil, reproduce it in Russia, and so on, as in other member countries.
My final question. Unfortunately, we are having so much geopolitical uncertainties. That would make a heavy toll on all multilateral institutions, including the New Development Bank. How do you see the danger, the maximum danger and the maximum possibility to work around the danger as someone working for the New Development Bank from day one?
I mean, I'd say that in the end, I think despite all the tensions and the sort of uncertainties, there will be, and there's always a recognition that these institutions, when they were set up, remember 1944, the world emerged from from major destruction, right? It was the end of the Second World War, millions of people lost their lives, economic infrastructure was depleted. It was multilateral institutions that built the first rail lines in Japan after the destruction. The first loan by the World Bank was also for the rail industry in France. So the reconstruction of Europe was very central then. Similarly, with the economic devastation coming out of COVID, I think the world will recognize more and more the importance of these institutions. So we look beyond the political uncertainties and the political tensions. We look towards the medium term of when we come out of that period, these institutions will become even more important.